Hey everybody, I'm Carson Grubaugh,
I'm Sean Robinson.
and
How you
this
all
is
doing today?
Living the Line.
We're going to be talking today about a book that Carson and I are 3 volumes of an ongoing series, and Carson and I picked up this book a couple weeks ago called Asadora by manga master Naoki Urasawa.
Yes,
And
we think.
Urasawa. So you've been hip to him for a while here, Carson. You've been sharing with me his series that he did interviewing other cartoonists, right?
Yeah, had you not seen his work before?
Well, I had read some scattered volumes of 20th Century Boys and
Okay,
Pluto X Pluto,
yeah.
which is a fairly like non. I don't think that that's typical of his stuff. And I think that I had read something of his that was really like one of his first works was like briefly translated, like when Viz first started putting out manga,
Okay,
like in '89 or '90. I'm gonna say it's Pineapple Army, and then I'm probably gonna be wrong. But it's nothing like the his mature stuff,
okay.
and is written by another cartoonist, I believe. But this is what I get for talking off my head
Yeah, that's fine.
about memories that are 20 years old. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna say Pineapple Army, and then you can bleep me out if I'm wrong. Okay.
no, we'll just leave it in there. I don't even know. I had seen 20th Century Boy and really enjoyed that and thought that was really good. I wasn't even aware. I've heard of Monster, I've heard of Pluto and other books by him. I weren't aware they were his. I knew they were popular manga. And then once I got back to where I could start buying books again, and I
Mhm.
started going, okay, that guy, what else has he done? Oh, all those things. Unfortunately, um, like Monster and Pluto aren't like fully in print.
Right.
You can get some of the volumes, but not other ones. So I haven't read those. I would love to read the whole thing of those because the more I get into his work, the more I really enjoy it. And then I had picked up a recently, maybe I'll do like a little one man thing on that one, but it was a collection of short stories called Sneeze,
Oh,
and those are all really funny. I think it's by Viz. It's similar production to this where it's got like the shiny cover, and I don't know what the hell bookmark this
yeah,
is. I don't know what that thing's all about, but
yeah. The book flaps. It's a nice.
yeah.
These are physically appealing volumes. Smaller than like a standard American comic, but not as tiny as like the Tankobon format. And man, can this guy draw? Urasawa has
Yeah.
got it going on. He's got a real, I would say, a animation sensibility in terms of his designs all being strikingly different from each other, and ability to replicate the faces in a variety of views and be extremely faithful to him, almost to a fault in some places in terms of like, you know,
Repetition.
right.
Yeah, I will
But
point that out when we look at the book for sure. And then he does that thing that I really like where he obviously has assistants like working from photographic backgrounds, and I love that in the manga. So that's something else I like about his work. And then the other thing you're referencing is I had been looking up someone else that we'll talk about eventually is Inio Asano, who's probably my top two manga guys right now. Good Night Pun Pun being the big one there. And I was looking up videos of how he works because some of his stuff is mind-boggling. I had to see how he did it, and that led me on YouTube to the Monbin show that Naoki Urasawa does, where he goes because he's a one of the masters. He's
right,
able to get access to other masters' studios and film them drawing. And so, of course, for guys like me and Sean, like that's
yeah,
oh my god, like I wish we had, God, if someone would have had videos of Stan Drake and Alex Raymond like
right.
that. So um I really like that. And he also has a YouTube channel where he's starting like from the basics of showing like this is what I have a studio assistant do on day one, how to draw speed lines. And I'll make that guy do that for like 2 months straight. So we're not even going to bother with the recreation of Urasawa's work because he's so actively putting that information. So we're
Right.
not going to try and pick his work apart. So
Well,
we'll just enjoy, show what we enjoy about the books, I think.
yeah. Urasawa is fairly unique in that the mangaka community has not historically been very open in the sense of, you think about like self promotion stuff now, and the expectation is that everybody goes out there and shows everything all the time, and that has not been the case for a lot of mangaka have been fairly recalcitrant in terms of that type of promotional stuff. It's more common to like do print interviews and maybe get your face taken, your photo taken at a press conference or something, but be a little bit more to the chest. And as far as like drawing on camera and things like that, I mean, that's just it's not a very common thing. I was shocked to see that, and very gratified too.
Well, and that's how they present it too. He's like, usually this is like secret closed off locations, but we've been granted access. And I think like every American artist has a YouTube channel and a feed, and everyone tells you, like how many times have we seen who's using what pen. And
Right.
yeah, so that kind of caught me off guard, and I wasn't aware of that part of the culture. But man, it's like it's a blessing to have those things. So
Sure is. Well, let's take a look at his newest book, Asadora.
yeah, Asadora. So we've got Sean's read the first two volumes. And I just like the third one just came out. I just got it in the mail a couple days ago on a pre-order, so it just came out. But we've tagged certain things throughout all three of them, but most of the stuff that we want to talk about, I think, can be covered in the first volume. So we're gonna skip the intro, I think, but just note that the book starts in 2020 and then time jumps back to 1959, where we meet Asadora, who's the young heroine, the plucky young heroine of the book. I guess it's a very like positive. I think we kind of need this book right now.
Yeah, and from the very beginning, you get a sort of mixed signal as terms of what genre we're in. And because of the way that this book plays with genre a little bit, we are going to be a little bit closer to the vest in terms of how we talk about plot development and things like that. So this is not going to be quite as spoilerific as some of the videos that we've done so far. I think that the primary reason just being that you get a few pages, like Carson said, get a few pages in 2020, and then we almost immediately jump to 1959. After being told that someone is going to live an extraordinary life. And then our time jump takes us to Asadora in her seaside town, running across the dock. And she's a girl who's in 6th grade, which in Japan is the last year of elementary school. And we see her doing a lot of looking for a doctor for her mother, who's about to deliver her youngest sibling.
Yeah, and I had forgot that it started in 2020 until you pointed that out to me.
Right.
So
that's how dramatic this shift is, and it's just a few pages before we're back in this other time period.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is there's also a side plot that I'm finding endearing in this book about this friend of hers, Sho, who's running, and his goal is to become an Olympic runner at some point, but he seems to kind of suck. So like he's like struggling. He's always running, he's always practicing, and his family's like pushing him in his Olympic dreams. But like Asadora, they call her Asa a lot. Yeah, she like catches up and keeps pace with him super easy. And that plays out in a funny way.
I've accidentally called her Asadora several times. Asa is her first name, and her last name also has the character Asa in it, but it's not actually Asadora. I'm assuming that Asadora is some type of pun or some other meaning that we don't have access to yet. So my apologies for getting that incorrect.
Oh, I just thought it was that people were like shortening her name.
Right. Right. Maybe, but her last name is Asa. I can't find it, but it's okay.
Okay.
Asa.
But anyways, they're running. She's out trying to get someone to help with mom having the baby, right? And she gets kidnapped by this fellow here. We can't remember his name. They don't
But
name him very often,
he,
but gets
he's
kidnapped by this fellow here. And so you kind of think it's like going to be a slow burn psychological thriller kidnap story
right,
almost.
because they have this time inside of this darkened area where basically he's explaining the situation over a long period of time, and you get the idea at first that she's in a genuine threat, and then after she menaces him by biting his hand and various other types of things, you realize that like she's got more control of the situation than you might expect, and that he might not be quite as menacing as you might expect.
Yeah, and the story develops from there. I tagged this page for, I think, two things that we both wanted to talk about. One is his really beautiful, I see that Mizuki influence on those really rubbery kind of, you talked about the character and the animated faces. So I love the way he draws this guy's face. It has so much life and expression to it. But then also I noticed, and I told her, it's, I think, a strength and a weakness of the work, especially as I read through multiple volumes. He'll get a lot of mileage out of drawing the same damn picture over and over,
Right.
or the face from the same angle. It's like, this is it, it's Dave does this too, where he'll draw the same picture over and over at different sizes. I'm fairly certain by looking at these that these are not stats. They're all redrawn just at different sizes and like slightly different angles, and the expression kind of changes, but he does that over and over. And I get it when you're doing like a weekly manga, any time saver. So he's able to, yeah, blow through. And on her face too, there'll just be these zooms for intensity. Changing of the panel sizes, I think, is something he's doing to change the intensity. But I found that compelling, but also I don't know, it gets a little old sometimes.
Right. And it's definitely like a something where if you're an artist type, that might be something that you're noticing over multiple volumes, or like you said, like we basically binged these,
Yeah.
reading several hundred pages of it in a row, you start to see that sequencing. Although I would argue in the converse that he mostly reserves that for scenes where there's little physically going on, and the intensity of it is the major point of it. When there's an action sequence or something is happening, he pulls it back and gives us the environment and the characters in the environment, and a little bit less of that kind of precision of duplication.
Yeah, but I just noticed, maybe it is because I binged it, that, and it's just smart. It's smart, right?
Right.
Given that, I never got bored with it. Like, it's a really compelling story. It moves along real quick. I'm invested in the characters. So it's smart writing. Like, he knows how to pace himself. What can I handle? Okay, I'm gonna have to have a lot of talking because I need to get things done, but it's
Right.
never boring talking. And part of that is because of, it's not just a statted head. It does have slight changes in it. And like this page here, I don't have a page number on it, but this page here, I noticed he'll like have a shrunk up panel, and that like compresses the guy's like, ugh. And then here where he gets more exaggerated, like, someone's shouting, it looks like Ace is shouting. Oh no, he's shouting, why did you kidnap me anyways? Because you shouted about me being a burglar. Like shit, I just had to shut you up. Like, the panel that's here, it's pretty much the same width, but it gets bigger. So
Right.
his panels are expressive, and I think that helps a lot. So it's a really masterful way of taking a shortcut, but also not.
We should give a shout out to the translation by John Wary. I'm not aware of his work before, but just fantastic integration of some puns and other jokes that are normally either untranslated, or you might expect a big, a big comment or under, something on the bottom of the page to explain it. But he just lets it roll right by, very smooth the whole time. And everybody has their own sort of believable voice. Especially when things start opening up story-wise in the second volume.
Yeah. And also, speaking of translation, no need to explain what any of this sound effect stuff is. I really like that in manga. I think their sound effects are so expressive. Like I don't really sit there and read bang, boom, tis, 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 like when I'm reading comics. They are visual and they are so good at the visual element in the manga. I like when they're left alone and I don't need the little like, hey, this means the sound of rain. Like I get it, it's raining outside.
Right.
Um, so that's very much appreciated in this book, and I think that's something really good
So
about manga.
so this pseudo kidnapping fairly quickly turns into a disaster response where you realize that there is a typhoon occurring outside, and the two of them are all of a sudden thrust into this situation where they are attempting to save themselves from being killed by this horrible storm that's happening, and they jump into a shipping container and find themselves post storm having survived in the shipping container, and all of a sudden realizing that all of this disaster around them, you know, all this disaster around
Sean's
them.
kids really want to come. It's a good book for kids too, so they're so excited. Here's them, and when you're talking about when he opens up to the action scenes, it's like, yeah, and his studio, whoever's doing his backgrounds,
Yeah,
is really,
unbelievable,
yeah, really
unbelievable work.
helping.
And so we've got the scene, the situation where all of a sudden you realize that we're actually in a disaster movie.
We're no longer in a kidnapping movie, we're in a disaster movie. Yeah.
Right. And Asa rises to the challenge, as does this gentleman here, who it turns out is a fantastic pilot.
Oh, and here's her last name, Asa Asada.
Asada.
It's a cheese.
Asada. Yeah.
And no, not cheese. I'm such an idiot. Asada. No, queso. Asada. Meat. Yeah. Right.
Uh-huh.
Carne asada. Yeah, sorry. That's such an idiot. So
Isa queso.
Yeah, it's queso. Jesus. I've been out of California for a year now, man. I'm forgetting my Spanish. No, it's the beginning of the semester. Asa Asada. Yeah, here they are. I love, okay, this is something I've noticed he does a lot. And I saw him on one of the Monbin episodes. I saw him doing someone crying with the tears, and I saw him make a point of it too. He'll draw the tears welling up under the eyes, and then he'll put the pupils refracted through the tear. And that's like a common trick of his, I think, that I think is really beautiful. So I tagged that one just because I thought it was like a lovely little moment of cartooning. But yeah, this is them now stuck in this shipping container. And here's another bigger shot of it. I don't know what page numbers these are, but they're in the shelter and he's crying. And I just love how he has like, it's not tears like dripping down the face. It's almost like these puffy little clouds around the eyes, but it's like the tears are welling and bubbling up. And then you get this double pupil effect. That's really good. So that was page 89. And then page 90 has this drawing here.
Yeah.
Where it's the eye in the eye of the storm.
And Asa's imagining this fairly terrifying eye in the center of the storm.
So what do you think about that drawing? Because I wrote a note, that assistant got fired.
I have a theory about this that I don't want to go into because of the our commitment to less spoilers.
Okay, to me, it just he uses tone all throughout the books, but it's mechanical tones.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a dirt tone. It feels very different than any other tone. And the drawing kind of looks like his pen work, but it's just so aberrant to the rest of the book. I don't know. I just thought it was weird. So I had made a note on that. Like it just doesn't fit on the page. So I don't know.
I
It could be an intentional effect that they were going for, but
Yeah, I think that what's happening here is she is having a reaction. So the guy will learn as a pilot, who she calls the hero of the skies. Says, "We may be in the eye of the storm." She says, "The eye of the storm." He says, "That means the center. It's calm there." She's not calm by this at all, because now she's got this terrifying image of the center of a storm in a circle being this eyeball peering through. And the next thing she says is, "It sounds like a monster." And this is the
yeah,
first time that I got an inkling that we might be in a different kind of situation, let's say.
yeah. But I thought, like, I don't know, it just didn't, it felt weaker than all the other drawings. Maybe it's because we've looked at stuff like Berserk where they do these swirly cloud demon type of things really well. That one just, so I had to tag that one as feeling weak. And then they come out and you really get to see there's been uh
Yeah,
the typhoon
total
and
total
has total,
calamity.
and I just wrote a note there. I wish I could make images like that.
Yeah,
Like it's just, yeah, it's just so impactful. And once you've been for most of the volume up in these close, tight, repetitious images that I was talking about, his, that's what I was saying. Sometimes it can seem like a downside, but then you hit a page like this and you realize he's really a master of the bait and switch. This whole
yeah,
book is a lot of bait and switch. And so you get sucked into these rhythmic one-on-one conversations, and then like outside there was this versus a and that made it more like, oh shit, versus like Akira where it's
right,
like 30 pages of buildings falling apart.
right.
uh,
Yeah, and there's something about that like holding it until it's time, that makes for a fairly extraordinary reading experience. And we're giving you one of these here, but there are a lot of these per maybe not per
well, and
volume.
the page turn, like timing, that the timing, it's like comedic timing, but I guess you would call it, um I don't know, what would you call that, like traumatic timing or
Hmm.
dramatic timing.
Yeah.
uh, so it has that same like page turn, oof, gut punch, and just absolutely beautiful imagery. um
So it turns out that she probably, her everywhere she lives, her village, everything that she's been running through in the previous section has now been wiped out by this typhoon or whatever it is. And there's an airfield nearby, and she is determined that she's going to help people in some way or the other. Um, and it turns out that they're able to do that because of the skills of the person who previously had been menacing her.
or kidnapper, yeah.
Right.
Here's some more destruction scenes. These are obviously photo referenced because the characters on the roof and stuff are realistic. So I think this is all drawn by assistants.
Right.
It doesn't have the cartoony aspect to it. This feels to me like they found a real photograph from a real disaster. Um,
There's a
and so,
thank you somewhere in the book to some type of research, historical society or something. I'm not seeing it now, but I would not be surprised if that is all historically researched.
so this is like the thing philosophically I found most interesting, not in the story, but as a practice. So I'll admit a very gross thing about myself here is, um, when 9/11 happened,
Hmm.
I was still trying to get into the comic industry, yeah, and I was I was like, it felt like I was pretty close to maybe getting into Wildstorm. I had a friend who had just got to be an intern there. And I've been talking to some of the artists, and just some people who knew things were saying like, oh, like, they're aware of you, and stuff like that. And one of the things that I felt like I was lacking, um was that big, like my friend, travel foreman was the guy that got the internship there. He said one of the things you're lacking that Wildstorm is doing right now is like the authority, the big screen movie,
Hmm.
like total destruction type of superhero comics. And because I don't have much inner mind's eye, I'm reliant on stuff. I was always trying to source like photographs of destruction for when I'm drawing my comics. I could go grab like, a building that got demolished or something like that. And I remember waking up and going to work. I worked in medical records, and uh, I worked later in the day. So 9/11 had already happened, that the towers had already collapsed, and I went to work at noon. And I was watching all of it on TV there, and I'm thinking, oh my God, there's going to be so much great reference for drawing comics. Like that's where my brain was at. And it's, I don't feel good about that at all. But and then they released books of those photos, and I'm pretty sure I bought one because it was like, oh my God, like this is what it would look like in a superhero story. And now I don't have to guess because I don't have that good of imagination. And looking at this brought that back, where I started thinking of kind of the grotesque ethics of referencing that kind of stuff and using it for your stories. And I don't think this very much is a story about, I mean, it is a hopeful story, but it
Yeah.
it moves on pretty quickly from this. It's not like Barefoot Gin, where it's about the difficulties of overcoming. It's kind of just like a few throwaway images here and there to set up a larger story. Like this too. This is definitely um, benefiting from some people's disasters. So I just thought that was interesting, and it brought back to mind how gross I felt about myself, but also how there was part of me that like couldn't control myself. I was like, oh my God, like that I can draw the authority now, Uh,
Right.
so all of these beautiful drawings of destruction I found compelling for multiple reasons.
Hmm.
I don't know. What
Yeah.
do you think? Is there like a fucked up ethics behind that?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it it actually treats it fairly. They. You said that about the optimistic thing. I think one of the strengths of this book narratively is the optimism that it has, and it doesn't feel pat. But Asa is in this horrible situation. Where's my house?
Yeah.
She's been looking for a doctor for her mom who's going to be delivering another baby. um, 7 kids in her family, and she goes from where's my house and where are all my siblings and where's my family to we got to help these people. And the when they finally get the plane and then start flying over, I mean, her first instinct is to identify her house, and when she sees that it's not there, she's like, well, let's drop the food. And
Yeah.
I mean that so yeah, I mean, I think it would be problematic to there's always something about using graphic images to your own ends. Sort of the Nazi thing that I had some problems with Monsters, the Barry Windsor Smith book Monsters, with where you're sort of importing some horror but loosing it from its original context. But in this case, I mean, she is a model. Both of them are models of what to do in a disaster, which is you look
Yeah.
for the people who need something and you give them what you have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure if this sort of treads the same way. And even though there are genre switches here for a while anyway, this is fairly squarely in the what would you do if your town is wiped out by a tsunami
Yeah.
zone.
And it does actually, speaking of Barefoot Gin, there is a similarity where, have you read Barefoot Gin?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's we should look at that at some point. It's a rough book, but a
Yeah.
necessary book, because it's an autobiography of the author basically surviving the bombing of Hiroshima. And similar, he was at school and separated from his mother, and during the bombing, the stress of it forces her to have a child.
Right.
And this, like Asa's mom has that when they do find her family on the roof, she's had the child, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
they got to find to get the baby some milk. That's
Right.
one of the things they drop, is they drop milk. So I thought that was interesting, and I wonder if that's him paying tribute to Barefoot Gin in a way, because Barefoot Gin is also a story of like relentless optimism in
Right.
the face of just awful circumstances.
So they find this shop owner and have twist her arm to get her to assist in making food for the survivors, and they're going to drop this food onto them. And the reason that I was really interested in looking at her is because she is wonderfully rendered. She's got this super skeptical, I mean, ugly, I guess is the real word to use, face. And you get to see him, Urasawa, draw her in all different types of situations and all different attitudes. And it's funny because it's just so striking, and very, very rarely do you see someone ugly portrayed in, visual media.
Well, and it's not even necessarily that she's like ugly, it's just
No,
that her attitude is so ugly. Like she's
on her
constantly
face.
got that stank face,
Yeah,
that
she's
like
got
mm.
she's got a real bad case of RBF, uh, and it's fantastic. I mean, I love it. I love the drawing in it. It's just a virtuoso performance, and she continues to appear in the second and presumably the third volume.
Yeah, since you were talking about that, I grabbed so here now this is later, and again we're not giving away much, but the hero of the skies, the guy who originally, this is volume 3, the guy that had originally tried to burgle and then kidnap Asa and then gets, turns into being a hero with her. They get up to some mischief, and this woman is kind of taking now a mother role for a lot of the survivors. So I think they live with her basically, and she is so disapproving of what they've been up to, and they're trying to explain to her like why they need to be doing it. And there's this beautiful comedy where he's also like he's ugly,
Right.
like he is a beat up, life has not done him any favors, and like the comedy of this face, like him being like and her just giving them that like this meanest stink eye you could ever give, and then the kind of the goofy and the expectation on Aza's face, and then kind of the like there is so much great acting in the faces. It is really beautiful stuff. um and then we're skipping ahead, we'll skip back to well, no, let's take a look at volume 2 real quick. The one thing we wanted to point out about volume 2 is there's another really great bait and switch. So volume 2 is all about Asa starting to fall in love with flying, basically,
Right.
because they've got this plane that they use, and they basically stolen the plane from a
Gangster.
mafioso
Yeah.
character, and it's got cocaine in it, if I remember.
Yeah, it does.
And there's a joke about dropping the bag of the white stuff for the baby with the milk, because the cocaine is like it looks like the milk powder. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
It's somewhere in there. Yeah. So anyway, she falls in love with this plane, and we don't want to give away too much, but um, volume 2 is mostly her trying to gain ownership of the plane.
Right. And learning how to fly it on the page, which once again, like super convincing on the page. My description of our description of it might sound a little less so, but it's very compelling.
And
Because,
then it's
yep,
like we have boom, and you get a time jump to 1964, and had totally forgot that we were working our way towards 2020
right.
by that point. I'm so sucked into the disaster story that's all I've been thinking about for a volume and a half. And until Sean pointed out right before the review, I'd forgot that we were headed towards 2020. So the time
Right.
jump to 1964, and now she's age
17
17.
years old. Yep.
And
And just a fantastic jump, and very, very, it's amazing how she looks like herself. I mean, this is not no small feat to cartoon a prepubescent girl convincingly looking like herself, and then all of a sudden being an adult. who still looks like herself. I mean, and all of it in a cartoony vein. It's not like any of this is referenced or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
It's quite a feat. I mean, I don't even know exactly. It's a hell of a lot of pre-planning to make it happen, and all these things happen so smoothly. Even something that's such a cross cut like that, like a 5-year jump, it really makes me wonder how much of this has he planned out in advance, and sort of what beats he's planning on hitting. Basically like how far has he got this going in advance, and how coherent is it going to feel by the end? I'm very
I'm thinking
intrigued.
pretty far, given that he knows he's headed to 2020.
Right.
Like he knows all the main beats in between for sure. Yeah, so it is, like you said, it's very smooth. But it's very smooth in the way it jerks you from genre to genre
Yeah.
and from time to time. And then also so I wanted to go back to what the last
Yeah.
thing we'll look at here is volume 3, which you haven't read yet. But there was a scene I loved because there is this side story that I'm assuming is going to wind up in the 2020 Olympics. I'm
Hmm.
assuming is where this is all headed, given this
Ah.
kid's Olympic dreams. It's my guess, but again, he wants to be an Olympic runner,
Right. Well, he's
and
not going to run in 2020 because he's going to be 80 years old in 2020. But somebody, that's very interesting. Oh,
I don't
didn't
know.
even
There's a connection
connect
to
that.
the Olympics,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because that's explicitly what's happening in the first 4 pages. Wow.
and I don't know. I think we're in 1964. So was that the first Tokyo Olympics? Because he's talking about not making the team or something like that.
Right.
So
Well,
I
yeah, his
wonder if some of the years are picked around which years
hmm
the Olympics have happened in Japan. I should have
right.
researched that. It just occurred to me now that
Yeah.
that might be
No,
the
it's very
case.
interesting. Yeah, his family. So and one of his family members had competed in an Olympics. So yeah, tell me about the scene.
Yeah, Soichi and Pops can probably go to Tokyo sometime this year, and then we'll all be in Tokyo. We lost everything in the typhoon, but we're making a comeback. Don't worry about not making the Olympic team. You're still young. You'll be able to make it for the Mexico Olympics. So I think it is a Tokyo Olympics in
Gotcha.
64. But anyways, he's running around. He's taking a job as a newspaper delivery boy because it lets him be practicing running. And he sees this guy run by, and I'm not going to pronounce the name because I'll butcher it, but he thinks it's like the Japanese, it's a guy on the national team, and he says, "This is my chance to race a world-class runner. I wonder what the Olympic marathon is like." And then he said, "Oh man, it's so hard with these newspapers." And then he decides, well, that's great, because if I can keep up with him with the newspapers, then when I get rid of the newspapers, and so he's chasing this guy around with these newspapers, and he gets so excited that he catches up to him, and then surpasses him, and then let's see, no, Ace is somewhere else, but there's a scene where, yeah, he's thinking about a letter that she wrote or something. They've been communicating, and he finally, I'm blowing past him, he almost gets hit by a car, and then he turns around, and this guy that he's been chasing, he says, "Hey, like, when did you take up running, Yotaro Ishida?" And he was like, I just started running. Like, I've been inspired by the guy that this character thought he was. And so he's been mimicking his style, but this is like a brand new runner that's just taking it up. And so this poor kid, is thinking he's like kicking an Olympian's ass, and he like can barely keep up with a beginner. So it's a reiteration of that thing where, like, Ace is totally smoking him in the earlier volumes. So
Right.
it's really good. I like the humanity of having these couple other side stories. It's something I'm really thinking about a lot and enjoying, and a lot of the comics I read and shows I watch is multiple interweaving character narratives,
Hmm.
especially over time. So it's a really fun book. I will definitely be buying all of them. I look forward to all of the other bait and switches that happen.
Yeah. I, I've been thinking about this type of genre shift and how cowardly most entertainment is for a long time. Um, have you ever seen the series Mad Men, Carson?
Yes, I never finished it because I don't know why I didn't finish it. I need to go back to it.
So
Um,
I watched the first couple seasons and was really into it, and really enjoyed, similar to this in a sense, where you have these really well observed characters who are interacting with each other, and you have a sense of what the overall arc is, but everybody sort of has their own interweaving arcs that occasionally touch down on each other. And there was a sequence, it must have been the end of the second or third season, where uh, I believe it's the John F. Kennedy assassination occurs.
okay.
And at the time that it happened, when I was watching this, um, I thought to myself, what would make this the greatest show that ever existed is if John F. Kennedy's assassination was the turning point for the entire show, and it became a post-nuclear adventure story where Joan and Don Draper are wandering through the rubble of New York, attempting
Yeah,
to survive. And I was just like, no one would ever do this, but
like
everything
The Cuban Missile Crisis actually led to a
exactly actually
um
led to a nuclear conflict. And everything that had been up to that point is building so much tension. What if it actually just released that tension with the bomb, and it's funny, I was just like, they would never ever do it. Like, even if that had been approved at the very beginning, once you have a successful show, nobody would ever do it because they're terrified of just bombing it into the ground.
God, that would be so good though.
Right. And it's funny, like, this pulls it, gets close to that type of that move.
Yeah,
There's an
kind of. Are you are we're totally off topic here, but are because you brought that up, are you aware that there's like a huge I forget why I quit watching that show. It was a good show. I need to revisit that. Are you aware that at least was a huge section of the internet that was speculating that Don Draper was DB Cooper, and that the show is like loaded with these clips that he, like, with all the stuff with the airlines, because there's a lot of references to airlines always and
no.
stuff, and there's like these nuggets that are suggesting supposedly that he might be DB Cooper, and I guess at the end of the show he has some revelation or something. I haven't seen the end
No,
of the show.
I only watched the first few seasons. Once it didn't become a post apocalyptic narrative, I was checked out. I was so convinced that that's what that last cliffhanger season, third season episode was building up to. That when it didn't end with Joan with an American flag wrapped around her as her own, and Don out there in like a loincloth that he'd created with one of his ties. I was like, oh,
oh,
okay.
there's been a couple of things where I've felt like I'm not going to try and, because I'm going to fail off the top of my head, but there's been a few things I've read where I thought they need to pull this move and then they don't do it, or a few things I've watched. Yeah, be braver, people. You'll be epic. You'll be legendary. So I scanned a couple things. This is a Viz production, and it's being done with new art, right? Like, this is something he's still working on in Japan at the moment, as far as I know. I don't think this is like a reprint of something that happened a long time ago, like 20th Century Boy. I think this is his current project.
Yeah, no, it looks like it started in 2019. So yeah.
So, of course, Viz, they know how to deal with line art because they do manga.
Right.
But there was a few things in the book that I wanted to take a closer look at just out of curiosity.
Sure.
One of them was that woman that you're so in love with,
Yeah.
her stank face, had this thing behind it that looked like super crazy tiny cross hatching.
Yeah.
So I scanned that, and that's just some interesting
Mhm.
tone pattern that they put on there. But
Yeah. I'm sure
reproduces.
that somebody did like a print of a weave or something and has created a mechanical screen tone out of that. Digital, digitally applied.
Yeah.
It's nice, huh? It's a good texture at the size that they used it at.
Oh, and it's reproduced really small. So I thought, damn, that's like that
Hmm.
is tiny cross hatching. I know how bad that guy's wrist hurts, but I had to get in and check. Did they actually do it? No, okay. But it looks really good. Um, this one, there was a couple I wanted to see what you thought. I feel like Urasawa drew these characters to here, and this
Uh-huh.
looks like an assistant because
Oh,
it looks
interesting.
like the same style to me as how the logs are drawn.
Hmm.
Like his work is tends to be a little more sparse and confident, and this is more like chicka 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 and ticky.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting. Or
so
or somebody took a cue from the foreground tickiness and applied that to the background there.
or
Um,
maybe this is a panel where he just drew the whole thing,
right.
but
Exactly.
this looks different from what I associate with his work, at least, and it looks more like what's applied to the background. So that was one that I wanted to look at. I don't think there's, I don't know, we can go up close just to say good job, Viz.
Yeah, well, good job licensor supplying them with the files at the size and everything like that. Yeah, the
Yeah.
books are beautiful. I like the off-white paper. Um, I don't know exactly what it's like a slightly antique, you know, paper. It has a little bit, more fill in than you might or because of that, but really nice.
Not much.
Yeah,
It's pretty clear, crisp,
I love
and
it.
I think he just draw like looking at the Monbin, he uses a pretty thick pen, so
Right.
I do think it probably gets closer to like the feel of manga as it's released there
Right.
on a slightly cheaper paper and stuff. And
Hmm.
here's a scan of that Eye of the Storm, and it's just all the other tone throughout the book is this kind of really mechanical stuff. And I
Right.
think part of my reaction to that was like this weird, dirty noise tone.
Hmm.
Um, but when I did look at the scan, I do think he probably drew this
Hmm.
because it looks like his kind of quick lines.
Yeah, I think that she's just she's imagining it, and so it doesn't have a sort of fidelity to you know an actual eye. It's more like her imagining of this monster thing. Like I said, I think this has some story implications too. Her imagining here.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe.
I,
Well,
I
it
love her hair highlights. By the way, it's a very unique way of doing hair highlights with the uh, chunky lines going through there.
having
It's
like
great.
a basically a white stripe with
Right.
like just draw these
Uh huh.
and then come back and tick 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 tick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I quite enjoyed.
And if you
Um,
look at the Monbin stuff, it shows him drawing as well the other people, and that dude draws fast.
yeah,
As
he's
do many of the guests on that show. Not all of them, but many of them are absurdly fast. They'll be like, "Oh, today's the deadline, and we got to turn in 32 pages that haven't even been started yet." And we've got like 4 assistants. Like, what in the hell? And then this one you wouldn't have seen. This was from
it's great.
volume 3. But we had talked about these days more ray pattern tends to be
An
seen as
accident.
an accident.
Right.
But looking at Berserk, I had seen places where they were doing it intentionally, and this
Right.
one just jumped out at me as so freaking smart
Yeah.
the way they did this moire pattern here, because it like lines up perfectly with the stairs,
Yeah.
and it really looks like I'm kind of getting a glimpse of stairs
Right.
through that window. It doesn't line up perfectly, but close enough that my mind saw that as the stairs continuing, and then obviously like some whiteout or
The
scratching out
etched
on top.
highlight. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a
And I
great
thought
image.
that is such a smart use of the moire. So I wanted to zoom in.
You got a little bit of what's called a Dutch tilt right here, which is a cinema reference to certain kinds of like Dutch film photography, where to show things that are off canter, you literally tilt the camera And this is a nice use of Dutch tilt here.
Yeah, you take the horizon line, and instead of having it run straight across, it's going at an angle,
Right.
basically. Yeah, that's a really good one. So, um, I am definitely sad that I can't get, and I just read the first volume of Astro Boy too. So I read the Pluto story, and it's really good. And I'm like so sad that I can't get complete runs of Monster, can't get complete runs of Pluto, because I'm really becoming a huge fan of Urasawa's work. I'll definitely get. I've read 21st Century Boys digitally, but I will definitely be getting a hold of that. Um, Huge. I don't know why my contrast is all screwed up on my screen, but I'll definitely be getting the rest of the Asadora volumes. Can't recommend them enough. Really fun, and I'm sure there's a ton of more bait and switches that I really look forward to being surprised by.
Yeah, really just enjoyed the heck out of it, and I'm glad that you suggested it, Carson, and or maybe I suggested it, I don't know.
You suggested
But,
this one,
oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, I'm glad I suggested that, Sean.
It was on
And
my list of books I wanted to buy anyways. So when Sean said, "Do you want to do Asadora?" I was like, "Hell yeah, that's already on my book porn list."
I want to throw out one other thing, is check out Wandering Island. If you guys enjoyed the second volume of Asadora, you might enjoy Wandering Island as well. Just because you have a, you know, pretty girl flying a period plane.
Who's that by?
And this is by, what is this? Kenji Saruda,
Oh, I'm
who
not familiar with
is
that.
he's worked in animation and has done like character designs and things like that. And if you've ever read, he's done very little manga work, but he had a 2-volume series called Spirit of Wonder in the mid '90s that was released by Dark Horse and was adapted into a movie. And he's got fantastic drawing, and in this one he seems to have adopted a looser handling technique. And anyway, well worth reading. This one came out in English by Dark Horse. They only put out 1 volume of 2. I'm not really sure why, but this is well worth picking up, and had a few similarities to the second volume of Asadora. I'm not saying
We're gonna leave Sean to do a one-man review of that one.
Sounds great.
Since you probably can't get the damn book anymore, right?
Right, I'll have to find out. They never put out a second volume, so
I'll steal it online. And one more book to pick up. Holy crap! I have a physical copy now, and my light's so bright I'm gonna have to tilt it so you can see it. Of The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. It is a gigantic book. It is hefty, and it's not available yet because this copy is one of the misprinted copies that has the missing artwork on 4 pages. I've looked at this book to the point where I can't even read it anymore in proofing it, digital copies of it and stuff like that. And I've seen all the artwork. I made a bunch of the artwork myself. When I opened this up and actually flipped through it in the book format, feeling the hardcover book, seeing the cool like spot varnishes, and then seeing the job that Sean has done in getting our work to reproduce, I just got excited about a book. I'm not that it's a bad book. I've just looked at it so many times. Right. I got so excited. I was like, I want to go start drawing again, which is crazy when it's like I'm used to other people's art making me want to go do that. And Dave's art makes me want to go do that. But even seeing some of my stuff reproduced so beautifully, I can't thank Sean enough. And I can't wait for you guys to, I can't wait for this to get reprinted with the missing pages in there and get it out to you all. So if you haven't done it already, go to your local bookstore, your local comic shop, and ask them to pre-order you a copy or pre-order them from Amazon, because it's absolutely gorgeous.
And if you're interested in the book, I would definitely recommend that you pre-order it, because last count that I saw, our pre-sales were up at about 4,000, and the print run is 5,500, or at least that's theoretically what we paid for. Like I said, they're going to be reprinting it. I've got some news on that fairly soon, hopefully. But basically like 2/3 of our print run, a little bit more than 2/3 of the print run is already going to be sold. immediately as soon as it's available. So if you're interested, I would really pick it up soon, because making a second printing, it's going to require more orders. And I really hope that you guys enjoy the book, and really, I hope that you guys enjoy Asadora too, because that was a hell of a read.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.